Every community has certain people, founders as we refer to them, whose lives have made such a difference in their community that they have permanently impacted the lives of future generations. Often, we only hear the names of these people. We see them on plaques, in statues, as names on the side of buildings and companies. During the next hour, you will have the rare opportunity to witness the story of an incredible person, a person who has made West Michigan what it is today.
Welcome to West Michigan Biography. Today, we will meet a man who is a legend in the music community. He taught instrumental music to thousands of children, especially at the Holland Christian schools. During that time, his generous community involvement included directing the American Legion Band and as one of the band organizers for the Tulip Time parades. Following his retirement, he was for 12 years a member of the Holland Public School Board. Over the next hour, we will share the story of a man whose very name is synonymous with music. We hope you will learn from and be inspired by this founder of West Michigan. Henry Vander, affectionately known as Mr. Van. Born in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1924, Henry was the fourth in a household of 7 children. At the age of 5, the country began to feel the effects of the Depression. Despite this, the family persevered, using music as a way to overcome the troubled times.
The difficulty that the nation was experiencing at that time was reflected into the homes in general, and our home was no exception. But we had strong parents, and they didn't complain. They tried very desperately to raise this family, and they did. When you have 7 children in a family, and there are 9 in the makeup that sit around that table 3 times a day, one of the things you become aware of is, for sure, you're going to have to help out somewhere. The folks encouraged us always, and we had a strong effort on the part of every person. You didn't embarrass your family. Think about what you're doing. You're not doing this alone. The consequence could hurt the family. And they never let that go. They were not nagging about it, but they stated the ideal and the expectation. And you had to stand up for your brothers and sisters. Nobody was exempt. They gathered us really around music as we grew up. My oldest brother played the violin. My oldest sister played the cello, and the 2 younger ones, sisters, played violin and cello as well. So I was sort of in the middle, and being in the middle, I had the opportunity to learn how to play an instrument as they came through the schools. So in the 5th grade, and we were known as the Vander Septet. We sang, and the interesting part of it was my mother would sit there at the organ. She didn't know anything about an instrument, so we would start to play, and she would play the organ, picking out the note as it went along. And she said, "No, you played that one wrong, fix it." So you got an idea what you had to do, and fix it we did. It was not the fastest method, but it was a method. And she would teach us all the songs because we were not able to buy books. And they hadn't any method to reproduce these things unless you had the book. So we were forced to memorize. And my mother had a phrase where she said, if you can't memorize it and you can't sing it from memory, you don't know it. And I think back now, when I look at it, it was really good because your parent was right there doing it with you and checking up to make sure that you played it right. The parents encouraged us to take music because it was offered to us, you know, in the schools. We went to Grand Rapids Public Schools, and I went to Palmer Grade School that was on Plainfield Avenue, which to you folks would be old US 131. And they tore that building down and transferred us to Palmer Grade School. That was further north. And that was in the, as we used to call it, the front yard of Creston High School. The high school director that I had would pick me up at school, ride out to his home in North Grand Rapids, that was near Comstock Park, give me a lesson, take me back into the city, where I lived about 3 blocks from Creston High School. And he did that all for 50 cents.
Henry's music career continued as he served in an Army band during World War II.
Well, it came my time for service. So I said to my teacher, hey, how'd you get in an Army band? He says, well, I tell you, first you have to audition. After you audition, you just tell them you don't know how to do anything but play a horn. And then if you have any luck at all, you'll get in for an audition. Well, it didn't work that way. I was sent to the infantry, and I did basic training with the infantry. And on the last day for full field inspection, I was going out with the entire regiment, 311 78 Division. In North Carolina, they have a lot of clay. And this soggy clay, where trucks roll over it, put these strong dents in it. I stepped on one on the edge, and down I went. My ankle had been broken. So I was transferred out of the infantry to the Interior Guards, a branch of the MPs. Well, then I heard that they were going to have a shipping list. They were going to transfer to another camp. And I went from Camp Butner, North Carolina, to Camp Sutton, North Carolina. And Sutton was right near Charlotte, 25 miles from Charlotte. Well, when I got to Sutton, I happened to see a fellow with a band emblem on his hat. I said, where's the band? He said, well, we're just forming. We're just getting players in now. I said, well, here's my unit number and here's my name. Ask the commanding officer if I can get an audition. A couple of days went by, and lo and behold, he had done the service. I got a call to go up and audition, which I did, and I stayed with the 339th Army Service Force Band from that point on through the war. The assignment of the band was broken up into things that you did routinely every day. You rehearsed, you practiced, you went on the wards. We were broken into combos. And to anyone that's going to be hearing us talking here, in this high-tech age that we're living in, now we're up to DVDs, and I don't know where we're going beyond that. But what we did is we were live music on these wards. We had a big stack, which we called the book, and we would go into a ward with our Red Cross nurse, and she would ask, what do you want to hear? And then they would say, well, we want to hear Sentimental Journey. And they would want to hear Lily Marlene. And then they'd want to hear Spike Jones' arrangement of The Fuhrer's Face. And each week, we put on concerts, either at the hospital or downtown in a big park that they had there. One of the things with our assignment was the routine that we had to fill, because, like I said, we didn't live in the high-tech age. You were talking Victrola. And they thought they had a real golden effort when the thing was about that big and you crank it on the side. And 33 records were coming out about that time. Otherwise, it was all 78. And for some unknown reason, we didn't get access to some of the later inventions. So, live music. We had a Dixieland combo. We had a big band combo. And then each week we put on a radio program, which was called This Week at Foster. And one of the fellows would play, Dick Alexander, would be your piano stylist. And we had an Irish tenor, and 16 of us would sing, the 16 singing men. And I remember so well, every week a city in Mississippi was a feature. And of course, like they would do Canton, Mississippi. Well, that suggests Chinese. And it was a Chinese type settlement. So we would honor that city and we'd do our playing. And again, we were at this time now involved in 1 or 2 a week bond drives. We'd go out to a little town in Mississippi and you'd find the corporate limits a half mile one way and a half mile the other way. And we'd go down the center there and march up the street and come back down the street. And they would sell war bonds. Well, we looked at these people that came out to buy bonds, and they did it like an auction, you know. Where's the money coming from? We'd sell $135,000 worth of war bonds. Where? The fellow said, we said, come here. Where does this money come from? He says, boy, have you ever heard of the word oil? There's oil around here. Well, that said it all. These look like campaigners, you know. They had these high tops boots on, and they riding Jodhpur, and a crash hat. but they bought bonds. Now you just think about that. $135,000 in a little town that had corporate limits of a half mile each way. Or we'd go to Meridian, or we'd go to Raymond, and all these towns for war bond drives. Made it very interesting for us because it was good duty. Oh, the food was excellent. I mean, how many people can go through World War II, 3 years, and have the fondest memory of saying, when you went to the chow line in the morning, "Sergeant, how would you like your eggs?" It is not heard of. But this big hospital we were at served many boys who had received rheumatic fever, who were afflicted with rheumatic fever and had bad hearts because of it. And also the people coming back from the islands with jungle rot and whatnot. But not pleasant. But here we had a colonel of the post and of the hospital who said, "Our motto here is, don't explain, don't complain, smile." Well, with fond words like that, I'll tell you, he had it quite well cased. The young men who were suffering from some of these military problems were not to be reminded of the problems, but be encouraged out of them.
The Knickerbocker Band played an important role in Henry's music experience, both in his teens and into his 20s.
There was a group called the Knickerbocker Band that was made up of Christian veterans, and they wanted to start this band so that they would have a band to play in front of them when they participated in memorial and Armistice Day parades. Rehearsed over in the southeast side of Grand Rapids. But in those days, you took a bus. You had a student card, took a bus, and I'd get on the bus in the north end of Grand Rapids and go all the way to the southeast side and not even have to get off the bus for a transfer. I happened to know a tuba player up in my end of the town who also played in this Knickerbocker Band. So I would walk about 6 blocks to his house, and then he'd cart me up to the rehearsal. He didn't take me back to my house, he took me back to his house. He took us back to his house, and then I could walk home from there after the rehearsals. But I played in that, and that was out school. And before the war, we had some players in it who were students at Calvin. See, Calvin had no big official music program or anything like that. So the first thing that we did is tried to get a band started. And we did. Well, I met a fellow by the name of Harold Gerdes. Harold was a graduate of Calvin, and he was working for a music store, and he was sort of in and out. He taught at Holland Christian and at Zeeland Christian, Hudsonville Christian, plus worked the music store. We wanted a band at Calvin, so they got him to direct it, and we sort of went out as recruiters and picked up guys that we know and gals that we knew that could play, and we had a pretty decent group. But he was He was a real teacher, and he became my mentor. I went to a concert and I heard all these young kids playing. I thought, man, that's great. How do you do that? Well, he said to me, I'd like to have you help me next year, if you would. I can't do it all by myself. Well, I hadn't had any teaching experience at that point, but I had all this background of high school, military, and so forth. But he says, you're going to have to learn how to play clarinet, and you're going to have to learn how to play percussion. So we'll get lessons on those during the summer. And then when the fall comes, we want you to go with us. And we'll go out and we'll get the feeder schools in Grand Rapids.
Known for his quality conducting ability, Henry was recruited to the area by Dr. Bert P. Boss to teach in the Holland community.
I was working in Grand Rapids at the time with Harold Gerdes, and we ran a summer band school. And when I was working with this band, there was a gentleman walked in and stood there and listened, walked out, and another class came in, and he sat there for a little while, and he walked out. It was no knowledge to me who the man was. And did this several times that morning. Just toward noon, he came and said, I wonder if I may talk with you at noon. It happened to be Dr. Bert P. Boss, superintendent of the Holland Christian Schools. He says, we're going to need a teacher next fall. I said, well, I've already signed up to work for Grand Rapids. Well, I had a friend of mine, graduate of the University of Michigan, played oboe. And he taught in some of these schools part-time. And of course, I was part-time the semester before. But now comes the decision time to teach. So Dr. Boss said to me, I'd like to have you come to Holland. Well, I can't under the circumstances. I said, and besides, I'm going to be leaving at the end of the summer, the latter part of August. I'm going on a trip out west. We're at 8,550 miles, all the national parks. Brand new Chevy, black Chevy. It's a beautiful car. We rolled that Hummer out of Grand Rapids and all over the west. And like the Grand Coulee Dam, and we went to San Francisco and Fresno and Yosemite, Bakersfield, south rim of the Grand Canyon, through the Painted Desert at the most marvelous time, and then up into Bryce National Park. And my big experience to stop at the Tabernacle in Salt Lake City. Well, I got back from that trip and there was a phone call. Would you call Holland? I called Holland. The offer was still on. But the job that Grand Rapids was going to offer me was off. So Holland bought my time and contract from Grand Rapids Christian. Well, that made for interesting work, because now I'm here in Holland 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, and I would zip out of here down M21 and get to the Southwest Christian School on Granville Avenue, and I teach there on Fridays, and on Wednesday I'd have another school. It was called Baldwin, and then I had another school which was Seymour. So I had filled in these various jobs, but in the meantime I'm traveling from one to the other. Well, the second year I did it, we looked around to get areas where we could have feeder schools in Holland. Ideal, Allendale.
Throughout his career and life in Holland, Henry became an integral part of the music community through teaching and through the organization of bands at the Tulip Time Festival. His excellence as a teacher brought him not only respect, but awards from his peers.
Allendale was really starting to thrive and build up. A great place, but they had no high school. And Allendale Public wasn't that big at that time. So these kids were getting on the bus and coming here to Holland. So we hoped. But in the meantime, unity starts with the Hudsonville people. And they always ran a bus from Hudsonville to Holland. Well, you got the situation that's building, but there comes a third element, namely Unity High School starts its formation. So they farmed me out to Beechwood School, which was the earliest days of West Ottawa. And I would teach then in Holland, in Allendale, Tuesday, Thursday in Allendale, and Fridays I would go to Beechwood. So now we got some feeder schools, and I'm working on the schools here in Holland. But when Dr. Buss asked me, would I be willing to take the contract and promise them 3 years, I said, I will do that. I'll promise you 3 years. Well, that turned into 36. So I gave it a try. That's true. 36 years with that group. And we started in the existing schools, so I've seen it all come from what it was and how many we added to it, like the West Side School and Central Avenue and 15th Street there, that little complex, the one building burned. The high school, no real accommodations. The high school at that time we rehearsed under a shelf in the gym, put a curtain around us, and it was adequate for the time, but it was not at all pleasant. In other words, you worked around it to make it something. But we had wonderful support as students, and we had wonderful support of parents. And the suspicions faded out as they saw that things were starting to come up. the thing that struck my attention was tulip time. It was in 1950 that I came to tulip time for the very first time. I watched this parade, never knowing that by fall I was signed up to take this program. Because we had relatives that live in this area. And I thought this is going to be a good place. But little did I know how good an influence it really was, or really is. Tulip time really manages a great interest. It comes at the right time of year. Spring of the year, concerts are finished just about. Get on the street and tap your feet. And it was really a great opportunity, and the support that we were getting was an excellent feeling, not only, but a thing that a person would be foolish to write off immaturely. So that brought us right into the system. You had to have uniforms. You had to have students. And that meant you had to have parents. So we began a band orchestra or a band parents club. And we got everything that we were going to get the hard way. Didn't come easy, but it became very much appreciated. And we worked endlessly to get that done. That in itself would be a reward. But I worked very solidly with the district. You see, the state of Michigan is divided up into districts. You have your festivals, your band and orchestra festival, your solo and ensemble festival, your all-star evening, and so forth. So I became very much interested. I was not one to shirk back. I got right in the district, rolled up my sleeves, and went to work. And I served as an officer in the district. And then we carried our intention to the state. And I served as the officers in the state through vice president. Because the year that they wanted to run me for president, I was having that hip trouble, and I didn't know what was going on at that time. And the Michigan Band Orchestra Association is too demanding a position. Well, in my case, to be gone. All the meetings, not just the ones with the groups, but your representation in all the educational block. So, well, I'll tell you, I turned that down. But I had served all the offices in the other. Then after, it was about 1959, about 7, 8 years, 9 years after I came here, I was elected into the American School Band Directors Association. And I served the offices there, ending with president in 1985, which was a marvelous experience because we were working with the elitists and the best, guys from all over the country. And our conventions were all over the country. And this is what made it interesting, because as a family, we went to all these conventions. So our children had a wonderful opportunity to take the train to Boulder, Colorado, and look up there in the Flatiron Mountains. Or we would go to Columbus, Ohio, and we had a marvelous time in Milwaukee. So, again, with family and with position, I moved through the grades, had wonderful opportunities to play and to serve, which netted many awards, not only for the band, but for me personally. I think what meant a lot to me was when I received the MAC Award. The MAC Award was presented, well, how do you put it? It was like the Emmy or the Oscar in our field. All of these had to do with music. I had the great experience of receiving the Edwin Franco Goldman Award, but along with that, an opportunity to teach at Interlochen, which I did for 3 weeks one summer, which set me up for 26 years at Blue Lake Music Camp, where I taught for that time. Received the Governor's Award and the Minuteman Award. The Minuteman Award is given to those who promote Michigan. Well, which may be unfair, but I had a natural. The convention was going to be in Lansing in 1972, so I was promoting Michigan all around. I'd go to, because your convention setup is listed so many years ahead. So what I did, I would really get a lot of brochures and all that, really to get as many of our membership as I could to come out and be in the city and state of our conference. I think maybe the prime story of it all comes down to the fact that we were selected to play for the inaugural of Richard Nixon. Everything was just right. And being just right was Guy Vander was running for office. He was the unknown at that time. And we put on a little torchlight parade with about 50 volunteers and marched from the Civic Center downtown to a building near Meyer. And then they had a Cracker Barrel occasion. And, you know, Guy Vander, very glib and able to speak, did so. So when it came to selection of a band for the inaugural, it was presented, and I think to the county, and the county through their channels, through the state, and we got the nod. And it was tremendous. We have a marvelous scrapbook of it all, but the memories just linger. What an opportunity. And then when you see a picture of your group coming down Pennsylvania Avenue with a Capitol dome in the background, it's a setting that becomes fresh every day that you think of it. and it's really marvelous, as it was written in the lives of all our students at that time, because it set them apart. We were in the Washington band.
Henry reached even more people in the community through conducting the American Legion Band.
We actively tried to recruit here of members, but most of all, it's summertime, a good way for you to keep your instrument up, your skills sharpened by playing. And the directors, I'd asked them, do you have some kids that are seniors? And we always had a end of the year breakfast with our seniors where we gave them their awards. And I'd always point out to them, no, it's not over. No, it's just begun. Give more time if you can. Join us. So, like Topsy, it kind of grew. And we're enjoying some good times. And we had an excellent presentation to the community this past year. Again, this is fanned out in sort of a double measure. When you have wonderful support of a crowd that comes, it just seems to work it back into the membership as well. They're here to play. And they bring others in. And others hear of us and come. So you find that you have music that is listener friendly and musically respectable. So you're serving your community. You don't put the horn down after it's all over with. You say, it has trained me now for this hour, so I can do more and give more and be a part of. These are mostly parents and young people. They come from all walks of life, and we have some long-term players in the group. The interesting thing is, it's once a week. So I have all week to get prepared for once a week, whereas I'd have to be prepared every day otherwise. And the mindset is such that the musicians know and the crowd knows, and together we make music.
Feeling that life is not a perennial recess, Henry served on the Holland Public School Board following his retirement.
When I retired, it was at that time that someone asked me if I would be interested in running for the school board. I said, no. Never thought about it. I said, well, think about it. So I thought, well, I'll go out and ask my friends. I said, what do you think about me running for the school board? The guy says, city council maybe, but not school board. I said, well, listen, I'm going to ask others, which I did. And he said, well, that fits right into my pattern. It's not a recess. Get in there and do the job. Well, you have to be elected. So we ran. And we were elected. And it went on for 12 years. So I had a wonderful opportunity to serve the community, having been on the other side of the issue. namely having an extensive background of 38 years with private education, and now to serve the school board in a general manner, and I had some marvelous experiences serving in that line. As you know, many things have taken place in these last 12 years, all the way from strategic planning to focused schools, and all the rigor that it has taken in order to supply the school with adequate finance. And we had a good board, and we worked hard. And for that experience, I am not only grateful, but thankful that I had the opportunity and that people trusted me. So I more or less became the voice for the silver set. Somebody asked me, what's that silver set then? I said, well, look at my hair, it's gray. Really, these are people who pay taxes. They need representation. And I felt that I could serve, having been now on both sides. I was public school educated, Christian college, and went into private education. Some people looked at it as the fox was living in the hen house, and that was not so. And I think we dispelled that myth as time went on. And then I look at this same generation that's around us. What can I say to them? I always use my podium as a pulpit. And if there's one thing that I would say with all the fervor of my heart, is take a good look at where we are, because a generation does not pass on its games, it passes on its culture. And when the culture is a game mentality, we lose a certain refinement and a certain effort that will find us wanting if we don't, by all means, pass on its culture. I would shout that from the housetop. I've had the opportunity to direct church choirs, and I did so for better than 30 years. We have the Holland Orchestra, the chorale, the March Festival. That's passing on the culture. The fine arts and the graphic arts. It's all here. That's what we pass on. Young people today who play instruments have untold opportunities to use them and to apply their skills. I have never regretted decisions I made years ago, because it proved out. I went to somebody that I respected very highly, when I had an opportunity on several occasions to leave, the last question this person said to me is, where do you want to bring up your children? I made that decision. I can live with that decision. And I give all glory to God, who has led throughout the way. A title came to me one time called Sound Forth His Praises. I was able in my career to follow that pattern. I think of a verse, my God, I will extol thee and glorify thy name. Each day will I give thanks to thee, and all thy praise proclaim. I can live with that.